The explosion lit up the darkness of space like a new star being born. Commander Jake Morrison watched through the thick glass of his ship's bridge as the UES Liberty broke apart in a brilliant flash of white and orange flames. Pieces of the massive colony ships scattered in all directions, carrying with them the hopes and dreams of 10,000 human souls. "That's it, then?" whispered Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her position at the communications console. "The last of our fleet is gone." Jake said nothing. He stood perfectly still, his hands gripped tight behind his back as he stared at the wreckage floating in the cold vacuum of space. Around him, the bridge of the Midnight Runner was quiet except for the soft hum of life support systems and the occasional beep from the sensor array. On the main screen, the face of Admiral Zektar appeared. The alien's skin was a dark purple color, and his eyes glowed with a sickly yellow light. 2 rows of sharp teeth showed as he smiled, clearly pleased with what he had just done. "People of the galaxy," Zektar said, his voice carried across all communication channels. "Today marks the end of human resistance. The species that dared to challenge the might of the Corvani Empire has been crushed completely. Their last ship burns in the void, and their pathetic colonies have been reduced to dust." Jake's jaw tightened. His crew watched him carefully, waiting for orders. They had been hiding in the asteroid belt of the Sol system for 3 months, watching as the Corvani forces destroyed human outposts one by one. The Midnight Runner and 3 other ships, like it were all that remained of humanity's deep space fleet. At least, that's what the Corvani believed. "The humans thought they could stand against us," Zektar continued, his voice full of pride. "They sent their primitive ships against our advanced technology. They believed their spirit would overcome our superior numbers. How foolish they were. Now they cower on their homeworld, knowing that death comes for them soon." The alien admiral gestured toward something off-screen. "Let this be a warning to all who would oppose the Corvani Empire. We are unstoppable. We are inevitable. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and you will suffer as the humans have suffered." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in darkness except for the emergency lighting. Jake finally moved, walking slowly to his command chair. He was a tall man with graying hair and tired eyes that had seen too much war. His uniform was wrinkled and stained from months of living in cramped quarters, but he wore it with the dignity of a career officer. "Sir," said Lieutenant Rodriguez, "we're receiving a coded message from Earth." Jake nodded. "Put it through." The message was short and simple. Only a few words appeared on the screen, but they changed everything. "Phase 2 is authorized. Let them taste what humanity really brings to war." Jake smiled for the first time in weeks. He turned to face his crew, seeing hope return to their faces as they read the message. "You heard the orders," he said. "Send word to the Ghost Protocol, the Nighthawk, and the Silent Strike. Tell them it's time to stop hiding." Far away on Earth, President Lisa Carter sat in a room deep beneath the White House. The walls were thick concrete, designed to protect against nuclear attack, but she wondered if they would be enough to stop alien weapons. Around the table sat her most trusted advisors, their faces grim in the artificial light. "The Corvani bought it completely," said General Paul Bennett, a stocky man with silver hair and scars on his hands from his days as a young soldier. "They think the destruction of the Liberty was real. They have no idea it was just an empty shell filled with explosives." "And the crew?" asked Carter. She was a woman in her 50s, elected to lead during peacetime, but now forced to make decisions that would determine the fate of humanity. "Safe," Bennett replied. "Captain Foster evacuated everyone to the hidden fleet 3 days before the attack. The Corvani sensors showed exactly what we wanted them to see. A ship full of people fighting desperately to escape." Carter nodded, but worry still lined her face. "How many ships do we have?" 237 combat vessels, said Admiral Helen Davis, the head of the Navy, "plus support ships, medical vessels, and supply craft, all hidden in the Kuiper Belt, powered down and waiting." "And they're truly invisible to Corvani sensors?" "Dr. Hayes assures me they are," Davis replied. The stealth technology we developed uses their own science against them. As long as we stay powered down and don't move, we're just another piece of space debris. Carter stood and walked to a large screen showing the solar system. Red dots marked known Corvani positions, while green dots showed the hidden human fleet. It looked hopeless. The aliens had hundreds of ships, while humanity had barely managed to build a fraction of that number. "Tell me about their technology," Carter said. General Bennett activated a holographic display. "Their ships are bigger than ours, with stronger shields and more powerful weapons. In a straight fight, they would win easily, but we're not going to fight them straight." "The plan will work," said Dr. Richard Hayes, a thin man with thick glasses and nervous habits. "We've studied their tactics for months. They're predictable. They rely on overwhelming force and expect their enemies to surrender when faced with superior numbers." But humans don't surrender," Carter said quietly. "No, ma'am," Bennett agreed. "We don't." Back in space, Jake Morrison watched as his ship's engines came to life for the first time in weeks. The Midnight Runner was small compared to the massive Corvani warships, but it was fast and hard to detect. It had been designed for reconnaissance, to slit behind enemy lines and gather information. "Course set for the outer rim," reported his pilot, Lieutenant Don Kelly. "We'll reach the fleet in 6 hours." "Good," Jake said. "Amy, send a message to Earth. Tell them the Watchers are coming home." As the Midnight Runner left the asteroid belt, Jake thought about the months of careful planning that had led to this moment. The fake defeat, the hidden fleet, the secret weapons that Dr. Hayes had been developing. Everything depended on the Corvani believing they had already won. The aliens were proud and arrogant. They had conquered dozens of worlds, and every species they encountered had eventually submitted to their power. They expected humans to do the same. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated what humans would do when their backs were against the wall. Jake had fought in 3 wars during his career, and he had learned something important about his species. Humans were at their most dangerous when they appeared to be defeated. When everything seemed lost, when the enemy thought they had won, that was when humanity showed its true strength. The Corvani fleet was already moving toward Earth, confident in their victory. They believed they faced a broken, defeated species with primitive weapons and no hope of survival. They were about to learn how wrong they were. As the stars streaked past the windows of the Midnight Runner, Jake Morrison smiled. The real war was about to begin, and this time, humanity would not be caught off guard. This time, they would be ready. The aliens had claimed victory too soon. Now they would pay the price for their arrogance. 3 months had passed since the Corvani Empire declared victory over humanity. Admiral Zektar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator, watching as his forces spread across what had once been human space. Purple banners bearing the symbol of the Empire now flew over former human colonies. The conquest was proceeding exactly as planned. "Report," Zektar commanded, his yellow eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "Sir, we have established control over 47 human worlds," said his aide, a younger Corvani named Vextar. "The colonization fleets are moving into position. We expect full conversion of these systems within 6 months." Zektar nodded. It was good news. The humans had been the last obstacle to complete Corvani dominance in this sector of the galaxy. Now they were trapped on their homeworld, probably preparing for a final, desperate defense that would accomplish nothing. "And the supply convoys?" Zektar asked. Vextar hesitated. "Sir, we have had some minor difficulties. 3 convoys have gone missing in the past month. Additionally, we have lost contact with Outpost 7 in the Centauri system." "Equipment failures," Zektar said dismissively. "These human systems are primitive. Their technology is unreliable. Send repair crews to fix whatever is broken." "Yes, sir," Vextar replied, though he looked uncertain. Zektar was not worried. The Corvani had faced technical problems before when conquering primitive worlds. Old human automated defenses might still be active, or perhaps some of their equipment was breaking down without proper maintenance. It was nothing that could not be handled. Far from the Dominator, Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez crouched in the shadows of a Corvani communication station. Her small team of 6 humans had been hiding on the asteroid base for 2 days, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They wore captured Corvani uniforms and had altered their appearance to fool the security systems. "Remember," Amy whispered into her unit, "we need to get in, download their files, and get out without being seen. If they discover us, our whole mission fails." Her team nodded. They were the best of the best volunteers who had trained for months to infiltrate enemy positions. Amy was proud to lead them, even though she knew they might not survive the next hour. The Ghost Protocol drifted silently outside the base, its engines powered down to avoid detection. Like the Midnight Runner, it was a small reconnaissance ship designed for stealth operations. Captain Linda Foster had modified it personally, adding equipment that would let them break into Corvani computer systems. "Ghost Protocol to Infiltration Team," came Foster's voice through Amy's earpiece. "Security patrol just past your position. You have a 10-minute window." "Copy that," Amy replied. She gestured to her team and they moved toward the entrance of the communication hub. The door was protected by an alien security system, but Amy's technical specialist, Corporal Steve Parker, had studied Corvani technology for months. His fingers moved quickly over the control panel, inputting codes they had stolen from previous raids. "Got it," he whispered as the door slid open. Inside, the communication center was dimly lit and filled with strange alien equipment. Banks of computers lined the walls, their screens showing information in the Corvani language. Amy could not read it, but she knew what they were looking for. "There," she pointed to a central console. "That's their main data storage. Steve, can you access it?" Parker nodded and connected a small device to the alien computer. The device had been built by Dr. Hayes specifically to break into Corvani systems. It began downloading files immediately. As the download progressed, Amy kept watch. Through the windows, she could see Corvani soldiers patrolling the base. They moved with confidence, never suspecting that humans were already inside their most secure facility. "Download complete," Parker announced. "But Amy, you need to see this." On the screen, translated text appeared. Amy read it quickly, her face growing pale. "My God," she whispered. "This isn't just about conquest. They're planning to kill everyone." The files contained detailed plans for what the Corvani called Project Cleansing. Every species they had conquered was to be eliminated, once their worlds had been strip-mined for resources. The Corvani saw other life forms as nothing more than temporary obstacles to be removed. "Earth is next on the list," Amy said, her voice tight with anger. "They plan to attack in 2 weeks. We need to get this information back to command," Parker sighed. Amy nodded, but as they prepared to leave, alarms began sounding throughout the base. Red lights flashed, and the sound of running footsteps echoed through the corridors. "They found us," Amy said. "Move now!" The team ran through the base, heading for their extraction point. Behind them, Corvani soldiers shouted in their harsh language. Energy weapons fired, leaving scorch marks on the walls. "Ghost Protocol, we need immediate pickup," Amy called into her unit. "On our way," Foster replied. "Hold your position." Amy's team reached the landing bay just as the Ghost Protocol appeared outside. The ship's weapons opened fire, driving back the Corvani soldiers. A hatch opened, and Amy's team jumped across the gap into the ship. "Go, go, go!" Amy shouted. The Ghost Protocol shot away from the base, its engines pushing it beyond the range of Corvani weapons. As they escaped, Amy clutched the data device containing the stolen files. The information it held would change everything. On Earth, Dr. Richard Hayes worked frantically in his laboratory deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The facility was enormous, carved out of solid rock and protected by multiple layers of security. Here, humanity's greatest minds labored to create weapons that could match Corvani technology. "The quantum field generators are finally stable," Hayes announced to his team. "We can maintain the disruption field for up to 6 hours. His assistant, Dr. Corinne Brown, looked up from her own work. What about the range? The entire solar system? Hayes replied with satisfaction. Once we activate it, no Corvani ship will be able to use faster-than-light travel or long-range communications. Branong smiled. They'll be trapped. Exactly, Hayes said. But we only get one chance. If they detect the field generators before we activate them, they'll destroy them from orbit. In another part of the facility, engineers worked on the ships that would carry humanity's counterattack. The vessels looked human from the outside, but inside they contained technology that would surprise any Corvani who encountered them. Captain Linda Foster stood in the main hangar, watching as her new ship took shape. The UES Retribution was larger than the Ghost Protocol, built for combat rather than stealth. Its weapons were human-designed but powered by captured Corvani energy cells. Its shields used a combination of human and alien technology that made them stronger than either system alone. "When will she be ready?" asked General Bennett, who had come to inspect the progress. 2 days, Foster replied. "The other ships in the fleet are nearly finished as well. We'll have 237 combat vessels ready for battle." Bennett nodded. "And the crews?" "Trained and ready," Foster said. "They've been practicing in simulators for months. They know their ships better than the Corvani know theirs." As Bennett left the hangar, Foster looked up at her ship. Soon, the Retribution would carry the hopes of all humanity into battle. The Corvani thought they had won, but they had no idea what was coming. In the outer reaches of the solar system, the hidden human fleet waited in silence. Hundreds of ships drifted in the cold darkness, their crews in suspended animation to conserve resources. They had been waiting for months, but soon they would wake up to fight for their species' survival. Commander Jake Morrison sat in his quarters aboard the Midnight Runner, reading Amy's report about the Corvani plans. The aliens intended to destroy not just humanity, but every intelligent species in the galaxy. They saw themselves as the only life form worthy of existence. "Not if we have anything to say about it," Jake muttered. Closing the file, he stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Corvani fleet was approaching Earth, confident in their victory. They had no idea that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their numbers, but their refusal to give up. The real war was about to begin, and this time, humanity would not be caught off guard. The Corvani Armada moved through space like a dark storm cloud. 300 massive warships approached the edge of the Sol system, their hulls gleaming under the light of distant stars. Admiral Zektar stood on the bridge of the Dominator, watching the blue dot of Earth grow larger on his screens. "Sir, we are detecting ships ahead," reported his sensor officer. "Multiple human vessels are moving to intercept us." Zektar smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "How many?" 47 ships, sir. They appear to be military vessels, but they are much smaller than our ships." "Pathetic," Zektar said with a laugh. "The humans send their last few ships to die gloriously." "Very well, all ships, prepare to attack. We will crush this resistance quickly and then deal with their planet." The human fleet waited in formation between the Corvani Armada and Earth. Captain Linda Foster stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, her hands steady on the command rail. Around her, the crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. They had trained for this moment for months. "Corvani fleet is approaching maximum weapons range," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Dan Kelly. "They're not slowing down." "They don't think we're a threat?" Foster replied. "Let them keep thinking that. All ships begin defensive pattern Alpha. Make it look like we're scared." The human ships spread out in a loose formation, their movements appearing nervous and uncertain. To the Corvani, it would look like poorly trained crews trying to defend their homeworld with whatever ships they had left. "Incoming transmission from the enemy flagship," said the communications officer. "Put it through," Foster ordered. "Admiral." Zektar's face appeared on the main screen. "Human commander, you have one chance to surrender. Order your ships to stand down, and I will make your deaths quick." Foster looked directly at the alien admiral. "This is Captain Linda Foster of the United Earth Navy. You are not welcome in our system." Leave now, or we will defend ourselves, Zektar laughed. You cannot be serious. Your tiny ships are no match for our fleet. We have already destroyed your colonies and your space stations. What makes you think you can stop us now? We're humans, Foster said simply. We don't know how to quit. The transmission ended, and Zektar turned to his weapons officer. Destroy them all. Show them what happens when primitives challenge the Corvani Empire. The battle began with a massive barrage of energy weapons. The Corvani ships opened fire simultaneously, filling space with deadly beams of purple light. The human ships scattered, their shields flaring as they absorbed the impacts. Direct hit on the Defender, reported Kelly. She's breaking apart. Foster watched as one of her ships exploded in a ball of fire. The crew had evacuated beforehand, but the Corvani didn't know that. To them, it would look like a real victory. All ships, fall back toward Earth, Foster ordered. Make it look like we're retreating. The human fleet moved toward their homeworld, firing their weapons as they went. Their shots seemed to have little effect on the Corvani shields, and more human. Ships began to explode under the enemy barrage. They're taking the bait, Foster said quietly. Keep falling back. On the lunar surface, Colonel Steve Parker watched the battle through his command center's windows. The moon's defense platforms were the last line of protection for Earth, and they were designed to look as primitive as possible. Sir, the Corvani fleet is approaching optimal range, reported his aide. Remember, Parker said to his gunners, fire slowly. Miss half your shots, we want them to think we're using outdated weapons. The lunar platforms opened fire, launching missiles and energy beams toward the advancing alien fleet. Most of the shots missed on purpose, while others struck harmlessly against Corvani shields. Their defenses are weak, Zektar observed with satisfaction. Increase speed. We will overwhelm their moon base and then destroy their planet. The Corvani fleet surged forward, eager to finish off the humans. They had spread out to attack multiple targets, just as Foster had hoped they would, hidden throughout the solar system. Commander Jake Morrison and his reconnaissance ships had been busy for months. They had placed thousands of small devices in specific locations, invisible to alien sensors and waiting for the right moment. All mines are in position, Morrison reported over the encrypted channel. The Corvani fleet is exactly where we want them. On Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, Dr. Richard Hayes worked in a heavily shielded bunker. Around him, massive machines hummed with power, ready to change the course of the battle. Dr. Hayes, came Foster's voice over the comm system. You ready? The quantum disruption field is charged and ready, Hayes replied. Once I activate it, the Corvani won't be able to use faster-than-light travel or long-range communications. They'll be trapped in our system. Do it, Foster ordered. Hayes pressed a sequence of buttons on his control panel. Across the solar system, hidden generators came to life, creating an invisible field that would cripple the Corvani fleet. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The alien ships continued their advance, still firing on the retreating human vessels. Then, suddenly alarms began sounding on every Corvani ship. Sir, the sensor officer on the Dominator said urgently, we've lost faster-than-light capability. Communications with the homeworld are down, Zektar frowned. What's causing the interference? Unknown, sir. It appears to be some kind of field effect covering the entire system. No matter, Zektar said. We don't need to communicate with home to destroy a few human ships. Continue the attack. But as the Corvani fleet moved deeper into the system, Morrison's trap began to spring. The quantum mines he had placed activated simultaneously, their explosions creating shockwaves that damaged alien ships and disrupted their formations. We're under attack, shouted the weapons officer. Unknown devices are exploding all around us. Where are they coming from? Zektar demanded. I don't know. Sir, they weren't there on our sensors a moment ago. The Corvani fleet found itself surrounded by explosions and unable to detect the source. Their advanced sensors, designed to work in normal space, could not function properly in the quantum disruption field. Sir, the communications officer said, We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Put it through, Zektar ordered. Captain Foster's face appeared on the screen, but she looked different now. Instead of fear, her expression showed cold determination. Admiral Zektar, she said, I hope you're enjoying our solar system. You see, we've been preparing for your visit for quite some time. As she spoke, the human ships that had been retreating suddenly stopped and turned around. But they looked different now. The plain, simple hulls had fallen away like shed skin, revealing sleek, advanced vessels underneath. What is this? Zektar whispered. This is what happens when you underestimate humanity, Foster replied. You thought we were primitive. You thought we were weak. You thought we would surrender when faced with superior force. The human ships opened fire, but their weapons were nothing like what the Corvani had seen before. Beams of pure energy, more powerful than anything in the alien arsenal, cut through Corvani shields like paper. How is this possible? Zektar demanded. You left so much of your technology behind when you destroyed our colonies, Foster said. We studied it, we improved it, and now we're going to use it against you. The battle had turned completely around. The Corvani fleet, trapped in the solar system and unable to call for help, found themselves facing human ships that were faster, more maneuverable, and better armed than anything they had encountered. This entire system is a trap, Zektar realized with growing horror. They made us come to them. That's right, Foster said. Welcome to Earth, Admiral. We hope you enjoy your stay, because you're never leaving. The real battle was just beginning. And for the first time in his career, Admiral Zektar felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. The space around Earth erupted into chaos as the real battle began. The UES Retribution led the charge, its weapons blazing with deadly light. Captain Linda Foster watched as her plasma cannons tore through a Corvani cruiser's shields, something that should have been impossible. Direct hit on enemy vessel, reported Lieutenant Dan Kelly from his tactical station. Their shields are down to 30%, Foster smiled grimly. Dr. Hayes did good work. Our weapons are 50% more efficient than theirs now. The human fleet had shed all pretense of weakness. The ships that had appeared primitive and outmatched now moved with deadly precision. Their hulls gleamed with advanced armor, and their weapons fired with accuracy that shocked the Corvani on the Dominator. Admiral Zektar struggled to understand what was happening. How can their weapons penetrate our shields so easily? He demanded. Sir, it appears they have modified our own technology, replied his science officer. But their improvements are beyond anything we thought possible. Impossible, Zektar snarled. They are primitives. They barely understand space travel. But even as he spoke, another Corvani ship exploded under human fire. The aliens were learning too late that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology, but their ability to take someone else's invention and make it better. Major Karen Brown felt the vibration through her boots as the transport ship docked with the Corvani flagship. She turned to her squad of 20 Marines, all wearing powered armor that had been built from captured enemy equipment. Remember, she said, her voice carrying through their helmet radios, we need to take their command center intact. We need their codes and their star charts. The airlock opened with a hiss, and Brown led her team into the alien ship. The corridors were tall and wide, built for the large Corvani warriors. Emergency lights flashed red, and the sound of battle echoed through the metal halls. Contact front, called Sergeant Jim Davis as purple-skinned aliens appeared around a corner. The Corvani soldiers wore their own powered armor and carried energy weapons that could burn through steel, but the human Marines had advantages the aliens didn't expect. Their armor was lighter and faster than the Corvani version, and their weapons had been upgraded with human targeting systems. Take them down, Brown ordered. The firefight was brief but intense. The Corvani fought with the confidence of a species that had conquered dozens of worlds, but they had never faced enemies like humans. The Marines moved with coordination that spoke of thousands of years of pack hunting, working together with an instinct the aliens couldn't match. Corridor secured, Davis reported as the last Corvani fell. Brown and her team moved deeper into the ship, fighting their way toward the command center. The aliens they encountered seemed confused by human tactics. The Corvani were used to enemies, who followed predictable patterns, but humans adapted constantly. Meanwhile, Captain Dan Kelly commanded the destroyer UES Vengeance as it danced between two massive Corvani battleships. His ship was a third the size of his enemies, but it moved like a fighter compared to their lumbering pace. "Sir, we can't penetrate their main armor," reported his weapons officer. Kelly studied the tactical display, his mind racing. The Corvani ships were heavily armored on all sides, but they had a weakness. Every ship needed to vent heat from its engines. "Take us around behind them," Kelly ordered, "and prepare to fire everything we have at their engine exhausts." The Vengeance spun around the larger ship, using its superior speed to stay out of the enemy's firing arc. As they passed behind the Corvani vessel, Kelly gave the order. "Fire!" The destroyer's weapons struck the enemy ship's engine ports, sending cascades of energy deep into its hull. The Corvani vessel shuddered and began to list to one side, its engines failing. "Direct hit," the weapons officer reported. "They're losing power." But Kelly wasn't finished. He activated the ship's gravitational drive, a piece of technology that Dr. Hayes had adapted from Corvani science. The drive created a small gravity well that caught a nearby asteroid and hurled it at the damaged enemy ship. The rock struck with the force of a nuclear bomb, tearing through the Corvani hull. The alien ship broke apart, its crew never understanding how a tiny human destroyer had defeated them on Europa. Engineer Sarah Martinez worked frantically to keep the quantum disruption field stable. Her underground facility shook as Corvani weapons struck the moon's surface, trying to destroy the generators that trapped them in the solar system. "Field stability dropping to 70%, called her assistant over the noise of falling. "Debris, reroute power from the backup systems," Martinez ordered, her hands flying over the control panels. "We need to hold this field for at least another hour." She had designed the quantum field generators herself, working from Dr. Hayes' theories but adding her own innovations. The field not only prevented faster-than-light travel, but also disrupted Corvani sensors and communications. A direct hit shook the facility again, and sparks flew from damaged equipment. Martinez ignored the danger, focused entirely on her work. She knew that if the field failed, the Corvani could escape to bring reinforcements. "Stability back to 80%, she reported. "But I don't know how much more damage we can take." Above Europa, the battle raged with increasing fury. The Corvani had finally understood that they were trapped, and desperation was making them dangerous. Their ships fought with renewed vigor, but human tactics continued to surprise them. Commander Jake Morrison, now aboard the UES Nighthawk, led a group of smaller ships in hit-and-run attacks. They would appear from behind asteroids, strike quickly, and vanish before the Corvani could respond. "The aliens are trying to form a defensive formation," Morrison observed. "They're bunching up to protect each other." "That's exactly what we want," replied his tactical officer. "Concentrated targets," Morrison smiled. The Corvani were falling back on their military training, which emphasized overwhelming force and defensive positions. But humans had learned different lessons from their wars. They had learned to be unpredictable. "All ships prepare for attack pattern Gamma," Morrison ordered. "We're going to hit them from 6 directions at once." The human ships scattered, then converged on the Corvani. Formation from multiple angles. The aliens tried to respond, but their large ships couldn't turn quickly enough to track the fast-moving human vessels back on the Dominator. Admiral Zektar watched his fleet being torn apart by enemies he had dismissed as primitives. Half his ships were destroyed or disabled, and the others were scattered across the solar system. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender offers from several of our ships." "No," Zektar roared. "Corvani do not surrender. We fight to the death." But even as he spoke, he could see the truth in his officer's eyes. They were losing, and losing badly. The humans had outthought them, outfought them, and outmaneuvered them at every turn. "Sir," the science officer said quietly, "perhaps we should consider retreat." "We cannot retreat," Zektar replied. The disruption field prevents faster than light travel. We are trapped here. On his screen, he could see human ships moving with deadly grace between the asteroids. They used the rocks for cover, fired from unexpected angles, and coordinated their attacks with precision that spoke of superior training. They adapt, Zektar said, almost to himself. They learn, they never surrender. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Zektar began to understand what he was truly facing. These weren't just another species to be conquered. These were humans, and they brought something to war that the Corvani had never encountered before, the absolute refusal to give up. The battle was far from over, but already the outcome was becoming clear. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity was about to show the galaxy what happened when you underestimated the species from Earth. The Corvani fleet was dying. Admiral Zektar stood on the bridge of the Dominator, watching as his ships fell one by one to human weapons. What had started as 300 proud warships was now fewer than 50 damaged vessels scattered across the solar system like broken toys. "Sir," his communications officer said with desperation in his voice, "the destroyer wing is requesting permission to surrender." Zektar's yellow eyes blazed with fury. Denied, Corvani warriors do not surrender to primitives. But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. These humans were not primitives. They were something far more dangerous. They were a species that refused to accept defeat, no matter how hopeless their situation seemed. On his screen, he could see the UES Retribution moving toward his flagship. The human ship was smaller than the Dominator, but it moved with deadly purpose. Its weapons had already crippled 2 of his escort vessels. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "the humans are hailing us." "Put them through," Zektar ordered. Captain. Linda Foster's face appeared on the screen. Her uniform was torn and dirty from hours of battle, but her eyes were hard and determined. "Admiral Zektar," she said, "this is your last chance. Surrender now, and your remaining crews will be treated according to the laws of war." Zektar laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think you have won, human? Even if you destroy my fleet, more will come. The Corvani Empire is vast. We have conquered 1,000 worlds." "Not anymore," Foster replied. "We've been monitoring your communications. Your empire is already falling apart. When news of your defeat reaches the other species you've enslaved, they will rise up. Your reign of terror is over." Zektar's face twisted with rage. If he could not have victory, he would at least deny the humans their prize. "All ships," he commanded, "target the human homeworld. If we cannot conquer it, we will destroy it." The remaining Corvani ships turned their weapons toward Earth. Their massive guns began to charge, preparing to fire on the blue planet that hung in space like a jewel. Foster's expression never changed. "I was hoping you'd make the right choice," she said. "But I understand. You can't accept that you lost to a species you thought was inferior." The Retribution suddenly accelerated, putting itself directly between the Corvani fleet and Earth. Other human ships followed, forming a protective wall. "You cannot stop all of us," Zektar said. "Some of our shots will get through, maybe," Foster agreed. "But you'll have to go through us first. And that's something humans are very good at, standing in the way of bullies." The Corvani ships opened fire, their weapons sending massive beams of energy toward Earth, but the human ships intercepted every shot, their shields flaring as they absorbed the impacts. The Retribution shuddered as it took a direct hit from the Dominator's main gun. Sparks flew across the bridge, and Foster was thrown against her command chair. "Hull breach on Deck 7, reported Lieutenant Kelly. "We're losing atmosphere." "Seal it off," Foster ordered. "All power to forward shields." Another blast struck the Retribution, and this time the damage was severe. The ship's hull cracked, and air began rushing out into space. "Captain," Kelly said urgently, "we can't take much more of this." Foster looked at her crew, seeing the fear in their eyes. But she also saw determination. They were humans, and humans did not abandon their posts when their world was threatened. "All hands," she announced over the ship's communication system. "This is the captain. We're going to ram the Dominator. Prepare for impact." The Retribution turned toward the Corvani flagship, its engines pushing it forward at maximum speed. Zektar watched in disbelief as the human ship approached on a collision course. "They're going to ram us," his tactical officer said. "Should we move?" "No," Zektar said quietly. "Let them come. We will meet death with honor." The two ships collided with tremendous force. The Retribution's hull crumpled as it drove deep into. The Dominator sighed. Both vessels exploded in a brilliant flash of light that could be seen from Earth. Lieutenant Commander Nick Thompson, aboard the destroyer UES Vengeance, watched the explosion with a heavy heart. Foster had been his mentor, the officer who had taught him everything he knew about space combat. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from Fleet Command. You're now in charge of the operation." Thompson nodded. Grimly, Foster's sacrifice had destroyed the Corvani flagship, but there were still enemy ships left. And they were still firing on Earth. "All ships," he ordered. "This is Thompson. Continue the attack. We end this now." The human fleet descended on the remaining Corvani vessels like angry wasps. Their weapons, powered by rage and grief, tore through enemy hulls with devastating efficiency. On Europa, Dr. Richard Hayes watched the battle from his control room. The quantum disruption field was holding, but barely. His generators were damaged, and he was running on backup power. "Dr. Hayes," came a voice over the radio. "This is Thompson. We need you to hold that field for 10 more minutes." "I'll do my best," Hayes replied, his hands moving over the controls. "But I'm not sure the equipment can take much more." As if to prove his point, another explosion shook the facility. Dust fell from the ceiling, and one of the main generators sparked and went offline, field stability dropping to 40%. His assistant reported. Hayes worked frantically, rerouting power and bypassing damaged systems. The field had to hold long enough for the human fleet to finish off the KORVANI. In space, the battle was reaching its climax. The Corvani ships, cut off from escape and facing superior tactics, began to surrender one by one. Their crews had seen their admiral die, and they understood that further resistance was futile. "This is Commander Vextar of the Corvani vessel. Conqueror," came a transmission. "We surrender. Please do not fire." Thompson looked around his bridge. His crew was exhausted, their uniforms stained with sweat and blood. But they had won. "All Corvani vessels," Thompson announced. "This is the human fleet. You will power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any ship that attempts to flee will be destroyed." One by one, the alien ships complied. The great Corvani armada, which had seemed so powerful just hours before, was now a collection of damaged hulks floating in space on Earth. President Lisa Carter stood in the Situation Room, watching the battle's end on the main screen. Around her advisors smiled with relief and exhaustion. "It's over," said General Bennett. "They did it." Carter nodded, but her expression was serious. "No," she said. "This is just the beginning." She activated the communication system, preparing to send a message that would be heard across the galaxy. When she spoke, her voice was calm but filled with unmistakable strength. "People of the galaxy," she began, "this is President Carter of Earth. Today, the Corvani Empire claimed victory over humanity. They believed they had destroyed us, that we were too primitive to resist their advanced technology." The message was transmitted on all frequencies, reaching every world in Corvani. "Space, they were wrong," Carter continued. "Humanity has not only survived, but we have defeated the fleet that was sent to destroy us. The Corvani Empire's reign of terror is over." She paused, letting her words sink in across the galaxy. "To those who have been enslaved by the Corvani, we offer you our friendship and our aid. Together we can build a galaxy where freedom is valued above conquest, where different species can coexist in peace. And to those who would follow the Corvani path, who would seek to dominate others through force, remember this day. Remember that there are those who will stand against you. Remember that humanity will not allow tyranny to flourish." The message ended, but its impact would be felt for generations. Across the galaxy, species that had been crushed under Corvani rule began to stir. Rebellion sparked on a dozen worlds. Commander Jake Morrison, now promoted to Admiral, prepared to lead humanity's first interstellar liberation fleet. The species that had been dismissed as primitive was about to become the galaxy's newest major power. The Krovani had claimed victory moments before humanity joined the battle. Now they would learn the price of underestimating the species from Earth.